During the Tactician's Trials tournament, Dishsoap dropped a tweet saying the Shyvana 2 Fast 9 tech, which he played 5 times against top players in global scrims, and he never bought forward. The key is that he doesn't reroll the dragons. Instead, he saves money by playing Shyvana 2 and prioritizing a Fast 9. The priority is go for Shyvana items, then go for backline AD, and then just throw random stuff on Briar and ideally Smolder later on. So in this episode of In Too Deep, we're going to hop on board with the world champ himself and see just exactly how it's done. We're going to hop on board with Dishsoap and teleport into Loaded Carousels. Loaded Carousels is a portal that will enable you to have enough items, usually to itemize 2 carries and a tank because you get extra components. And if you pick up more extra item augments, you might even be able to go for a trio carry, but you do have to make sure that the comp supports it. Dishsoap in general has been experimenting with the Dragon Shapeshifter line for these scrims. We're playing scrims to prepare for the upcoming Tactician Cup number 3 and regionals. And all these players in this lobby are either players who have qualified at a regional level or have even gone to the World Championship. For example, we have Replay, World Champion from Set 8, Wage and Iverson, one of the top players from North America, Piva from Vietnam, Bintum from Korea, and Les Coco from EMEA. So we got a lot of good players. Our opening items is going to be Bow, Glove, and Cloak, and this leans us towards AD. So right away, we think about 2 comps that can utilize bows. One is thinking about Callista, which is what almost everybody thinks about when they have like a Rageblade opener. These days, Callista is really, really powerful, but he's scouting around right now and he sees a couple of other people angling for it as well. When people are holding things like Tristana, Lilias, they have open bows and rods, they're probably thinking about that. The other possibility is playing around Dragon Shapeshifter, and I think he's going to buy Namzi and prepare for that possibility. Let's go ahead and dive into his 2-1 augment choice because it's going to be really crucial to get it right. Escort Quest is an augment that will allow you to snowball your lead. We've actually done a video on Dishsoap playing Escort Quest in the past. I don't think he has his position to play it this time because he doesn't have a lot of upgrades. He held like a Lilia pair and a Seraphine, like he's holding a Namzi 1. Not really a good chance for him to win, so I don't think he can capitalize on that very well. Shields Up is a very powerful augment for Vanguard-oriented builds. One thing that's kind of interesting is that if he was in the spot to maybe reroll Warwick, let's say he had like a corrupt Vampiric Scepter, he could go for something like, you know, Quicksilver, play for Titans or Rageblade, things like that. But I don't think that's actually a really powerful build right now, nor do I think that he's in an opportunity to capitalize on Vanguards in general because he held things like Bastion and Shapeshifters. Actually, he does have a Mordekaiser here tucked away, so he could think about that if he really wants to. But Shields Up, again, is a combat augment, and it's something that you really want later in the game because crowd control for 6 seconds at the beginning of the game isn't really prevalent. There's not many units that CC in general. So things like CC immunity always get better later in the game when a single second stun can change the entire course of the fight. Early in the game, things like Silver Veil, Shields Up, Quicksilver, these are just not exactly the ideal items. The exception being Unleash the Beast because that is a really powerful augment in general that gives you extra combat stats and the CC immunity, which is a bonus effect. Sleight of Hand is worth considering. It kind of has a little bit of the same shades as Escort Quest, which is instead of getting gold, you get like a Thief's Gloves, and you're trying to drive your tempo by having Thief's Gloves slammed on a 2-star unit, preferably a frontliner. The benefit of Sleight of Hand is that you're playing a lot of compositions that you have high quality units, but you just don't have enough items to get there. A comp, for example, that might want Sleight of Hand might be something like a Fiora, Gwen, Karma, Preserver line because you want to have items for Fiora, Gwen, Karma, and if you hit, you know, Morgana and a Briar, and you also want to itemize your tank, it could be a little bit tricky to have that many items, and so you have Sleight of Hand and you have Loaded Carousels to get additional gloves. That being said, part of the reason why you want to take Sleight of Hand is to win streak, and kind of going back to the Escort Quest, we don't really have that strong of a board right now to actually go into it, so I don't actually recommend picking Sleight of Hand right here. We waited about 10 seconds to reroll, so Dishsoap actually put a lot of thought into Sleight of Hand, but decided to opt against it because he actually revealed double down on his first 2 options. Keepers is like really good for melee comps and general tempo, but again, we don't really have a way to capitalize off of it, nor do I think that he wants to play around melee comps. I think he's just not really a big fan of like Keepers 2's lose streak into melee comp. You wanted Keepers 2 win streak. Double down is one of the most powerful econ augments in the game, but you do have to try and commit to the lose streak. It's just too hard to guarantee a win streak, and so usually you often play double down and sell everything and angle Callista. Cauterize is actually not that bad of an augment if you have a Pyro or a Warrior start with a Kali and maybe even multi-strikers. But the issue is that you really need to like snowball it because the more you're able to stack and kill things, the more you're likely to get future stacks. It's like a snowball mechanic. And so I don't really think, again, we're in that position. So I'm pretty sure it's double down here. All right, so Dishsoap doesn't end up full selling his board. He needs to hold on to some of these cheap units like Elise and Namzi. If you sell these units and just try to open for it completely with Double Down, there's a chance that you just don't find things like Elise and Jace and Namzi because they're one cost units. And that's also entirely possible that you just don't find it whatsoever. And if you do, you're not going to 2-star it. So it's going to be really, really tricky to pick those up later. So he's going to hold on to it right now. All right, so one loss in the books. We're scouting around, seeing if there's weak boards. There's a handful of players that have 3 units only with minimal item slammed. The important thing is that we try to kill units and preserve HP, but we don't play too strong of a board. Oh my god, and we got completely had. Bintum sells his entire board. And now Dishsoap has lost his entire lose streak. I mean, I guess he's on a lose streak of 1, but that's a really, really bad outcome for him. So Double Down already, you can see the frustration from Dishsoap. He's already lost a huge amount of momentum for his Double Down. This is already a bad start. I guess one thing he could think about doing is starting a win streak. I don't think he's likely to start a win streak with all 1-stars and Namzi too. If he does want to try to commit to the win streak, he would have to slam items here and try to see if that can make the difference. The question would be, what items does he want to slam? And I know Dishsoap really likes having items for Shyvana as a priority. And so looks like he is going to slam a Last Whisper. And I think that's a little bit of an interesting pick because most people would try to prioritize Rage Blade because they want to make smolder items. But he recognizes that he really wants to prioritize Shyvana items. Looks like Dishsoap ends up losing here. He did slam the Last Whisper Sword to see if he can actually win and maybe kill units, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world, and we didn't really expect to actually win anyways. Okay, so we're on loaded carousels. Let's pause here and take a look at the different combinations. When you're looking at this kind of carousel, the most important thing that you're thinking about is, can I take any of these combination of items and slam them immediately? But because Dishsoap is not actually prioritizing slamming them very quickly, he can actually afford to take it a little bit slow because he has Double Down and he wants to lose streak. He's probably looking at the 3 cost as the highest priority here because he just lost his Double Down streak. Looking at this right now, you don't really want that many belts and gloves for this composition. You could use one for the Infinity Edge and the other for the Last Whisper, but we already have a Last Whisper slammed. So it's pretty much down to the Nico and the Jinx. We have Sword Vest. The sword allows us to make something like Deathblade, or potentially make a Bloodthirster as well if we really want to. The Nico gives us a Shapeshifter, which is nice, but she gives us 2 main defensive items. I actually like the idea of taking this bow sword on Ziggs, but it's 2 gold difference, and we do end up losing like a lot of econ that way. So I think Dishsoap's going to be a little bit more desperate. So I think that's why he's going for this Jinx here. Another thing that he could have considered was maybe that Rod and that Vest to try to go for Crown Guard. But the issue with going for Crown Guard is that if he gets a 3rd Rod, he's going to be in trouble. A lot of times you have to think about not just what the items that you have that you can build, but also your item economy of what might potentially drop. There's like a metaphorical bag that you like reach into every PV round at the end of stage 2 and 3 and 4, and you pull components, and you only can get a certain number of components max. And if you grab a component out of that bag, you're less likely to see it. What that means is if you get dropped a sword, you're less likely to see more swords in the future. And if you're picking rods off of carousels, you're not actually taking that rod out of that metaphorical bag. So if he gets dropped another rod, he's actually going to have a 3rd rod that he has to figure out what to do with, which is going to be a little bit tricky. I yapped a lot, but I realized that that 3rd rod could also go for Rage Play, so it's not the end of the world. But I do think that in the end, going for the Sword Vest is perfectly fine, and he has the opportunity to go for like Bloodthirster Titans. He has the opportunity to go for Deathblade. His item spread is very open, and based off whatever combination of items drop, he has a ton of options. And more importantly, he wants to focus on his econ. I think someone has worth the weight Jax 3 already, so this is going to be a pretty high tempo lobby, and it's going to be a really punishing stage 3 if he ends up losing a lot of HP. Okay, we're going up against Bobster, who has a really strong mage start and has all those shivs, so shivinates. He's scouting around to see if he's contested, and I think he may not be because you don't really slam Morello in the Dragon line, since Dragon already gives you kind of built-in Morello red buff and Sunfire with the anti-heal. Okay, we make Jace too, so we really want to win this fight. We also sacked our previous round by playing our strongest units on the bench. That was a really heads-up play just to make sure to guarantee the 3 loss here, and we need to get that double down streak going. We end up using our remover onto Namzi because we get a guaranteed item remover every single end of stage now. Just a little min-max. Lo and behold, we get another bow. Oh, we get dropped another rod. Okay. And another sword. So we have a really interesting slam opportunity here for a lot of different things. Okay, so let's go ahead and pause here. He's going to go ahead and pick up this 2 reroll shops. So here is where I think a lot of players are going to disagree about what to slam. So let's go ahead and break down exactly what is possible, because I think making a mistake here can cost him his entire game. We already have Last Whisper, so we already have one item committed to our backliner, either Varus or Smolder. And right now, Namzi is our best unit. So you could argue that you want to itemize Namzi as best as you can. If you want to build items for Smolder, the itemization would be Last Whisper, probably Rageblade and Deathblade. And then you make Bloodthirster and Crown Guard. Bloodthirster and Crown Guard going to our Shyvana, and then you start to eventually build a third item for Shyvana later on. The other argument could be that you want to start building more frontline and then try to figure out your backline later. So I can see an argument for both. Let's see what he does. Okay, he's actually not going to slam immediately yet. And I think that's really good discipline because he has to make sure that he's going to lose streak. And he kind of made the mistake previously of like losing. I guess it's not really a mistake because he got open forwarded on by another player. So it's just something that I guess was unavoidable. But he, again, didn't want to like over slam, because if he slammed all of his items, he might end up being too strong. And if he over slams now, then in a future fight, he might have the problem of not being able to remove those items later. All right, let's take a look at these augments. You have my bow, item collector, and little buddies. You have my bow. You don't really need more items now, to be quite frank. We have an overabundance of items, and our issue is actually our economy, ironically enough, because we end up taking an econ augment and then not actually leaning into it correctly. So we're poorer than usual. I actually would favor either a combat augment here or just another econ, which sounds really silly, even though we took double down. Item collector is actually pretty decent because it's like something that's a scaling augment. The more items you have, the more powerful you get. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items that we can slam. So your team getting 100 HP and getting a bunch of AD and AP. That doesn't even sound that bad. But I'm looking at Little Buddies here, and Little Buddies is one of the best augments for this line because it's entirely driven by the 5 costs and maybe some performance of the 4 costs. And you do want to play a bunch of 1 and 2 cost shapeshifters, so Little Buddies ends up being like an incredible value for a composition like this. He ends up rolling options 1 and 2. Again, big grab bag, very similar to what we just talked about. You already have a lot of items, and so like what are we gonna do with 3 more items? We can't even use them right now either. And then not today. Again, another item augment. It's not something that's that good until we hit Briar. So if we're waiting for the hit Briar and Spikes, let's just go ahead and pick Little Buddies here. And the interesting thing about Little Buddies is that we're also about to just commit to a loose streak throughout stage 3 anyways. So when we want to spike is in stage 4 when we roll for a bunch of the 4 cost and 5 cost. So it all kind of works out anyways. All right, Dishsoap committed to slamming a few of his items with Last Whisper, Deathblade, and Crown Guard. The Deathblade is because I think he just has an overabundance of swords. You just have 3 swords. It's going to be hard to make, 3 separate sword items. So just kill the sword components by making a Deathblade. And Deathblade is also quite a good item for all of his 80 units in the back. So, that's always a really good thing to make here. He also chose not to slam because that was a little bit close. If he ended up committing to it, he might have ended up winning by accident. He's playing 4 Hunter and 2 Shapeshifters, but he's meticulously scouting to make sure that if he has to weaken his board, he will. And he did actually a good play here. He teched in 1 Namzi 1 to reduce 4 Hunters to 3 just to make sure that he doesn't win. Again, this is him trying to just min-max, play the strongest weak board he possibly can. It's such a weird concept to actually learn stuff like this when you're trying to like learn how to lose streak, but mastering this min-max is going to pay off huge dividends with every life that you're able to preserve. There's another loaded carousel, so let's go ahead and break this down. The first that I'm looking at is that there's a Nasus on the carousel, and that's going to be a unit that you're going to want to spike around because he's a 4 cost for Little Buddies, and he's a shapeshifter. He also has a Titans on him, and that's actually just kind of hard to pass because Titans is one of the best items for Briar. So you're just going to eventually want Briar items. So I'm already thinking that it's just got to be Nasus, and it's not something else. If it was Nasus with really terrible items, I would consider taking maybe this Bloodthirster onto this Karma because you could play multiple Bloodthirsters as well. He ends up going for the Nasus here. Very high value. Finds a Shyvana pair. So we finally picked up Shyvana in stage 3. And now we're going to transition to the Dragon. Again, trying to make our board strong, but like weak at the same time. Queuing up into Less Coco. This is one of our matchups that we were most afraid of because he's at 51 HP and he's playing like Ashe 1 carry. Good thing we didn't play 4 Hunter. It might have potentially swung the fight if we like killed everything here and then isolated the Mordekaiser. Who knows what have happened. We're now going to put into our team planner the units that we want to play, which is 6 Shapeshifter, Varus plus Smolder. We have a Shyvana 2 in the shop, and he's scouting to see if he even wants to make it, because again, the Shyvana 2 might actually be a little bit too high tempo. It looks like the people that he's scouting are pretty strong. They got like 2-star upgrades, and it seems like for the most part, they should beat him. So it makes this Shyvana 2. This is 2-star mages with Mana Zane, so definitely a loss. We're going to see if we can actually kill any units here. We didn't kill a single unit, so a little bit rough. But I guess we got the econ going at least. We got the full streak. And Dishsoap will probably have to roll at 4-1 instead of 4-2. I don't think he has an opportunity to actually wait here. So the most important thing when you're playing these kind of transitions is to sell the unnecessary units. So he's already, getting rid of things like the extra hunters and just, clear bench, clear mine. I think a lot of people, when they're doing these transitions, hold extra units that they don't need. And while it does technically like min-max the percentages of whether or not you're likely to hit certain units, like if you hold a rise, you're more likely to see the 4 cost like Nasus and Varus. It just complicates your roll down too much. Okay, we're going to look at this roll down, and he's going to purely look for Varus, 6 shapeshifters, ideally Briar and Smolder. And right now he's rolling down, and he hits, 2-star Nico and Varus pair, Nasus pair, but did not actually 2-star the units that he's looking for. And he rolled a pretty meaningful amount of gold, so this is not exactly the ideal situation. He's going to full slam his items here. He's got Crown Guard and Vow. That's just totally fine. Crown Guard and Vow are just good defensive items. And it's really, really important for him to win as many rounds as he can in stage 4 to start swinging momentum the other way. With double down, when you snap your lose streak, you want to actually start a win streak and then snowball that into a level 9. Take a look at these augments here. Pyro Crown got nerfed really heavily. The fact that it doesn't give you Infinity Edge is a really big deal in Pyro specifically. Like Infinity Edge here would be pretty good. So I don't think we want to take the Pyro Crown. Although I will say that Pyro Crown is also pretty good with Smolder. If we had a Smolder, I would consider taking it. It just doesn't feel like it's worth using a prismatic slot to go from 2 to 3 Pyro right now. Call to Chaos is actually something that I am open to. The only problem is that with Call to Chaos, there's actually a handful of options that I don't think are very good. For example, I don't think that it's good for you to hit a Sniper's Focus. Like the 3 Sniper Focus is that good. Hull Crusher is kind of mid, given that it'll make our positioning a lot worse. And then I don't think the emblems are very good either. And if you get the 3-star 3 cost, it's also bad. So the more I'm thinking about it, Call to Chaos actually has a lot of bad options. Like 40-50% of the time, it's just straight up potentially like bad. So I don't think it's worth it. If you can get the Lockets, the Zeeks, that would be fantastic, but it's just so unlikely to happen. It's a little bit late for Pandora's items. I don't think that you ever take this unless you're super desperate at 4-2. You might just get a radiant item you can't use, and you have to roll it for entire stage, and this is just too low HP to do it, so no thank you. He holds Call to Chaos and rolls options 1 and 3. Anger Issues is not a serious augment here. You just can't play Anger Issues with this board because it just doesn't really benefit any other unit except for Smolder. So it's not really worth it, especially because we don't even have the units. New Recruit is actually pretty good here because we're on so many pairs and we might be rolling on 8 for a while. Plus this Champion Duplicator might help us cheese something like a 2-star Legendary. So I like New Recruit here. So I think I would actually roll Call to Chaos and see if we get something better. We roll Radiant Relics. Radiant Relics is a little bit weaker now because we have loaded carousels, so we have fewer item slots. We already have 3 items on Shyvana. We have 2 items on Varus, so we would need very specific items. We would want something like, Infinity Edge or some 80 item in the back that's really good, or a really good tank item for Radiant Relics on like a Nico 2. But Radiant Relics into a tank item isn't exactly ideal, especially in Shapeshifters where you spread out your front line so much. It's hard to get value off of one single tank. So I think it's probably just New Recruit here. All right, so with our extra duplicator, looks like we're going to make Varus 2 immediately because we're broke. And, like we said, we really need to actually start streaking. Another way you can think about duplicator is that it's just worth a certain amount of gold. If he had 30 gold more and rolled, he probably would hit Varus 2. And that duplicator here is worth a lot of gold, both in terms of instead of waiting and rolling, but also because of the power that he would get for double down and start win streaking. And look at this Shyvana 2 just dive in the back and be able to just AoE a lot of these weak units down. This is part of what makes Shyvana really powerful in the mid game, is that she really gets into the back and auras a bunch of the weak 1-star or units without items down. Morgana's a pretty decent pickup, although I think that he really wants to play a +1 blaster. Morgana would go in over Rumble and get the Witchcraft, and she has good utility, but I think the blaster's a little bit too crucial right now for Varus' success for damage right now. Our entire team game plan is for Varus to cast, and then Shyvana to just burn everything down over time. We're going up against a Callista 1, Rakan 1, and lo and behold, it's actually Bentham who griefed our streak earlier. But look at this Shyvana potentially burn down this Callista. Oh, it's so close. Oh my goodness gracious. Actually, the fact that this couldn't kill the Callista 1 is a little bit unfortunate. It actually might be slightly positioning as well, because if Varus was able to reach this Callista, maybe that would have made all the difference in the world. Also, that's part of the reason why some people build Ionic Spark onto Shyvana, because that Ionic Spark does a little bit more damage as opposed to something like, you know, the Titans. You might do like Spark, Crown Guard, and BT. And then doing a little bit more offensive damage instead of defensive might be the difference maker of killing that Callista. But you can at least see the vision of like why it's really good. And if you have 3 Dragon, that Callista is guaranteed to die. Because we get Briar with Titans on the carousel. That's incredible. That's basically the best possible scenario. And Briar can go immediately in. The question is, do we feed Briar at the moment? And there's no hesitation. Immediately feeds the Briar. The debate to feed is largely broken down to the amount of lives that you get. In stage 5, when you start to take a 1 unit loss in stage 5, I think it's 11 base damage. And so if he's at 20, 21, if he loses twice, he's just going to die anyways. In stage 6, that's up to 13 damage as the base. And so if you end up losing anyways, you're like at 1.5 lives no matter what at 18. So I think it's a comfortable zone that Dishsoap can be in going into stage 5 and 6 and hopefully playing for a win out. Briar does stabilize this board significantly because now we have a 3rd threat on the board to deal with some backline threats. Like a Briar would have helped clean up that Callista from that previous fight. And once again, by the way, broken win streak. So it's just really suboptimal with like how we've played our double down so far. Yeah, we're going up against Wukong Jinx. Thankfully, they haven't hit like Wukong 3, Jinx 3. That's usually another comp that we might struggle to burst if you just are stuck on this. But we jump to the back, and you could really see like the big amount of DPS punish when you have 3 threats now, which is a really big part of what makes loaded carousels really good, is having those triple threats to burn a bunch of enemies down. All right, we spike a Smolder on 8 going into the creep rounds, which is also massive. So now we get to replace a Blaster. We're going to go ahead and use a remover to optimize and probably start moving items to Briar as well. So we can get like, you know, Crown Guards onto Shyvana, and then maybe like, you know, Bloodthirster, maybe even Second Titans onto Briar. I think someone told me once that double Titans Briar is actually BIS on her if you can get her stacked with a bunch of Shapeshifter HP and feeds. We open up this Anvil, and it's a little bit awkward because we already have a Last Whisper. So if we wait a Rage Blade, we would be stuck with a second Last Whisper, which is pretty inefficient. We could also go for Infinity Edge here, but then we're stuck with a red buff, and that sucks because we end up having red buff and dragons. If we go Runins, then we're stuck with Last Whisper again. Oh, geez. It looks like we might have to just make red buff and go for Infinity Edge, or we have to go for a frontline item here, which I don't really like because we have to take a defensive item. I think I'm just probably going to take the Infinity Edge here. Another interesting question here that looks like he's going to answer is, does he even really want to move items onto Smolder yet? Because he is still playing Varus 2, and right now it doesn't look like he's going to transition to the Smolder 2 immediately because he doesn't have like Smolder Biss. So playing around this Varus 2 is much more stable of a game plan than playing around Varus 1 because it doesn't have like the ideal item set up for Smolder at the moment. Oh wow, he actually gets an Artifact Anvil offered, and he can actually go to 9 as well. He's rich enough to do both. So let's pop the Artifact Anvil. He sees Lightshield Crest, Silvermere Dawn, Blight Angel, and Unending Despair. Blight Angel is like the best item in a vacuum because of its powerful combos, but he has no good holder of it unless he wants to like throw in a random Karma or a Nora, and that's not exactly good, and he has no synergy with it. So probably not this. So Silvermere Dawn is actually acceptable on Briar, but we have no way to get it on Briar. One thing that's really important to pay attention to is that we have no item remover anymore, so we kind of have to take something with that in mind. So it's probably just Lightshield Crest or Unending Despair. There's no one that really uses Unending Despair because Shapeshifters don't really shield very much. So it might just be Lightshield Crest just by process of elimination, but we'll see. All right, Lightshield Crest it is. And he's just going to stick it on Nico. I mean, every few seconds, it gives a little bit of shielding based off resistances. Kind of like Moonstone Renewer, but not exactly. Look at this Shyvana now with 3 Dragon. Get to the back and burn down the Callista 2, right? So that's a different change of pace. Before in the past, 2 Dragon Shyvana unable to kill Callista 1, 3 Dragon Shyvana with that extra buff ends up killing a Callista 2. Really, really big, profound difference. Okay, we level to 9 now, and we get the Syndra in. So we tech in a little bit of Eldritch, pick up a Voidling. That's kind of cute. Getting a little Eldritch summon here to help get a little bit more frontline in front of Varus and Smolder. One thing that Dishsoap seems to be trying to do is like get the Shyvana and Briar to like kind of tag team here and jump into the clump together. Shyvana kind of trolls sometimes. She's supposed to target the largest clump, but she ends up like moving a lot of times off to the side. Just do your best to try to put her in front of the clump as best as you can, as if she's Tom Kench. Looks like he's murdering the Hui Vanguard reroll board, so very easy win here. And Dishsoap's on a streak. He's on a comeback. And he's got that double down gold really rolling in. That's a Briar pair if he wants to go for a Stone Plate here. Stone Plate's not very good, though. Oh, he's going to take a Blaster +1. Interesting. Does that mean he wants to go for a 4th Blaster instead? So he can, like, take out the Syndra and then play Blaster +1 and play 4 Blasters. And that's a way for him to stay on Varus for a while as well. Like, really lean into the fact that, like, he has items on Varus and not Smolder. Okay, I like it. Blaster on Nasus, totally fine. And now we're off to the races. Looks like he's just kind of crushing everything. He's just has Smolder 1, Briar 1, but like he's completely stable and his board is like overwhelmingly strong right now. And he has little buddies value. Oh, right. And that because he's playing, you know, Rumble for the extra Blaster here, he actually gets some additional little buddies value. One thing to note is, does he even want to play Jace over Swain so he can get additional buddy? That is something that's probably debatable and why he hasn't sold this Jace. He probably might be evaluating his board to see if he needs to do that. But a lot of times you don't want to sacrifice the unit quality too much. He already has 1, 2, 3, 4 buddies. Do you really need a 5th? Usually it's like, you know, 3 or 4 is already a lot of value. And so if you want to go for like even more, you might be over indexing on it while lowering your unit quality. So it's a little bit of a debate. Wukong 3, Jinx 3 is just strong enough to put us down to 1 life here. That's not very good. We're at 4 HP and it's very, very close. Looks like we're going to item remove and try to see if we can transition items over to Briar. And we're going to do a big roll down and look for a good combat charm and 2-star 5 costs. Okay, large defensive golem. That's a great combat charm. We find Tristana over Rumble for frontline issues. And we're still stuck on Smolder 1, Briar 1, which is not ideal, but we're going to switch items over and probably stack Briar. Put items on Shyvana instead. We're looking at these items. We're looking for a Smolder item. Don't want double red buff. AP. Shojin's not good. It's probably just Gunblade then. And we got Mana Reeves, which is not good. We're going up against 4-star Jax with Worth the Wait. Although, I don't think Jax looks that good because we're playing Callisto 1 in the back. So, very easy light work. It's a top 4. It's a top 3. The top 3 and both the opponents are down to 1 life. He actually didn't feed the Briar because, I mean, maybe there's a combination of there's too much to do in a turn, but also he was so close in HP. He doesn't want, like, you know, a feed diff to be the difference between getting 5th and 4th. His opponent finally hits Vagar 3, so Mage 3 is online. Again, all these boards are looking pretty strong. He's going to try to see if he can get the Shyvana into the clump, so he moves Shyvana to the left side, hoping that Shyvana dives closer to here. This is actually a little bit of a vulnerable spot here for Bobster because Shyvana's AoE could theoretically hit both of these, but it's just so easy for him to crush through the front line, and Bobster is dead. 3-star Mage is taken down, and Dishsoap's down to 1 life, all on Briar 1, Smolder 1. And we picked up a 1-cost charm because that's all we can afford, and doesn't even really make much sense here to roll. I guess he does, just in case it changes anything. Maybe an argument for playing Jace over the Swain so you get a little bit more gold. This Wukong Jinx board beat us last time. We want to try to minimize the Hunter resets. He's playing 2 Olaf 2s. He's trying to get the Hunter resets by ambushing one side specifically. This Wukong is down already, and we're on the Jinx 3, and I think it's a 1 HP comeback. And that is how you do it. That is the style of the world champion. If I do say so myself, that is perfection. That's how it's done by the world champ. Well done by Dishsoap, and shows you that even though some things went right, he hit the Briar 1, Smolder 1, he didn't actually need that to get over the finish line. And also he made so many micro plays to try to optimize things like his positioning as well as his itemization that really led to the keys to success. Remember, the 6 Shapeshifter, 3 Dragon Core is really, really crucial. All you need to do is just get that board online and you are good to go. Thanks for watching this video. I'll see you guys next time.